Hey guys, welcome to another PixLab Tutorial Tuesdays. What we're going to be showing you today is how you can create a very simple day-night cycle in Unity 5. Unity 5 makes this extremely easy for us with the new Procedural Skybox. We're going to go into detail on how to generate your own Procedural Skybox using the new Procedural Skybox material that has been provided by Unity for us, and how to do a basic script in C# to rotate the sun so that we have the day-night effect, as well as adjust the intensity to adjust the lighting in the scene. So let's hop right in. I'm going to open up Unity 5 here. We'll be using the PixLab tutorials project, which we used in our last video about the splash screen creation. If you would like to check out that video, you can just click in the description below. I might add a link on the screen for you, and you can check out how to create a splash screen in Unity 5. Definitely something you should look at. So let's open up the project. I might get the update notification now. Let's just see. Okay, now update notification. So let me show you what we got going on here. This is the finished scene that I've got open in front of us. What we have is basically a main camera which is positioned in the world. We have our directional light, which has been linked to our skybox to be the actual light in the scene. So if I rotate this light, you'll see the sun comes up and it sets. Now we're going to create it so that it goes over your head, sets on the other side of the camera, goes all the way around and comes right back up. Now what we'll also be doing is manipulating the intensity value. If you check out the inspector panel on the right side of your screen here, we will be changing the intensity of the light based on the duration of the day. So once we get to halfway through the day, in other words, to be say dusk, we will take the intensity down, and as we get close to dawn, we will bring the intensity right back up. This will stop any strange artifacts from appearing in the lighting of the scene. So I'm going to play the scene for you, but before I do, let me show you on our actual directional light we have a script down here called day-night cycle finished. All the script basically does is it asks you for the minutes in the day. Now this is a real world value. I'm saying 0.5, so half a minute. It's going to take us 30 seconds to complete an entire cycle of the light. So we're going to hit play, and you can see the sun rises, and if I rotate my view here, you'll see it will go, and it will go. There you can see it coming down to the horizon, and it sets immediately. If you look here, the intensity value is down to 0, which will stop any strange artifacts from occurring. And as we close in on dawn, you'll see the sun starts to rise and the intensity comes back up. Now again, we could set this to 3 minutes and it would be a lot slower, a lot more realistic. You'll see now that the sun slowly rises over the horizon. Now these are the settings. That is only one setting that you need to know of. And yeah, I think we're just going to hop right into this. Again, this tutorial just assumes that you have basic knowledge of the Unity interface. If you don't have knowledge of the Unity interface, we will be working on doing a small interface introduction for Unity 5 very, very soon. So I've created a folder inside of our project called Day-Night Tutorial. It has a subfolder in there called Finished. I'm going to go ahead and create another folder, and I'm going to call it Start. And then I'm going to create a scene, a new scene, so File, New Scene. And I'm going to save the scene immediately as, if I go into my folder Day-Night Tutorial, and I say start-day-night. That'll be our scene name. Now, you just launched your new scene. This is probably what you're seeing in front of you right now. Just a basic skybox with a directional light in the scene and a main camera. However, this directional light has not been linked up to your skybox yet. Alright, so let's open this folder called Start. Now let's create a new folder here. We can create one that says Skybox, and we're going to create another folder, and we're going to call it scripts. We're going to open our folder called Skybox, and I want you to create a new material. So you go right click in your file view, create, and you just move down to material. Then you're going to call this Skybox, or we'll call it my Skybox. Then I want you to go over to the inspector panel over here, and under shader type you're going to go click on there and just go down to Skybox, and then there will be a submenu with procedural right at the bottom. This will instantly generate a skybox for you. What I want you to do then is just drag it into your scene. Nothing will have changed, but you have now added your skybox to your lighting settings. We can now go ahead and we can tint the colors of the sky to really anything that we want, and you can create some really cool effects. For this one I'm going to create a sort of dark ambient sort of effect, so I'm just changing the sky tint color to a bit of a darker color. I always change my ground color in the right here to a dark blue instead of the standard gray. I like that. I feel like that's a bit more true to the actual world out there. You then have a couple of settings, one called sun size, which I'll show you in a second, one called atmosphere thickness, and one called exposure. So let's start from the bottom and move our way up. Exposure is literally self-explanatory. As you move it up, your scene becomes extremely bright, or at least the background does. As you move it down, it becomes extremely dark. We're going to leave this at the standard 1.3 value. Excuse me. Then atmosphere thickness is basically the gradient that moves between the ground and the sky. So burn it all the way to the top and you can get some really cool effects from this. Again, I'm going to leave it pretty much standard. Sun size I will show you in a second once we've actually attached our directional light to our skybox. So firstly, click on your directional light there and zero out all the transform positions. So we're going to make it XYZ needs to be at 0, rotation needs to be 0, and 0. Now if we then go and click on window and go down to lighting, so we're opening up our lighting panel, you'll see here under environment lighting skybox, you'll now see your skybox has appeared there. It says my skybox. That's because we dragged it in earlier, as you can remember. Right below that there's a variable called sun, which requires a light. So we're going to add our directional light to that. Now this will automatically be your sun. So if you now rotate the sun all the way around, so 180 degrees on the x-axis, you'll see that it actually has a sun now. So let's just go right ahead back into our transform positions here. We'll set our rotation to 0, 180. In fact, let's go right ahead. We'll set this to 350 by 0, negative 350, negative 350. Why is this not working? I think I'm in local. Okay, so let's keep it at 180 on the y-axis. Alright, that's fantastic. Now I want you to just rotate your sun up a little bit so you can see it. And then we're going to go ahead and click on our My Skybox texture or shader that we've created earlier. And now you can adjust the sun size variable. So if you want a very big sun effect, you can just scale that up, or if you want a little dot, you can just scroll it down. Alright, enough of that. So we've set up our basic scene here. Now I want you to hide the sun underneath the horizon. For this, I'm going to turn down the sun size because we don't need a really big sun. So yeah, that'll do. So we want to position this right below the horizon, like so. Okay. Now we know that our position here is zeroed out, our main camera is all set up, everything else is good to go. So we're going to go back to our start folder, and inside of our scripts folder we're going to right click and say create and say C# script, and we're going to call this day night. I'm going to call it start, you would just call it day night cycle. open that up, and then we will start editing. Sorry, just bear with me here. Alright, so here's the finished script. This is a very rough script. We're going to be working this out as we go along. We're going to be creating some of our own methods here, so if you're new to that, you should research that a little bit before heading into this. So in your new day-night start class, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a public float variable, and we're going to call this minutes in day, and we're going to just initialize this to 1 for a beginning, for start value. Then we're going to create 3 float values. We're going to create one called timer. Now if you guys recall, we used the same variable in the last tutorial to create an actual timer that counts up or counts down appropriately. We'll then create another float, and we'll call this percentage of day. So what this will do is it will basically tell us how far into the day are we. So 50% being a full day cycle, 100% being the full cycle. So that will be the variable that we use to change the intensity of the light. And then we'll be creating one more float variable, excuse me 1 second, and we'll call this float variable turn speed. This will be the speed at which the actual light rotates on the x-axis. So in our start method or function, for those of you using JavaScript, we're going to declare, or we're going to initialize rather, our timer value to 0.0f, which will just zero out the timer for us. Next, we're going to go ahead into our update method. Now what we're going to be doing here is just setting up a couple of basic rotation scripts and so on. So we're gonna come back to this. Create your first method. So the first method will be void check time. Alright. Check time with no arguments. Check time is basically going to be our entire timer script, just condensed into one method, so that we can call this in the update method without having to rewrite this code every time, or it's just to keep our code clean and neat. So go right ahead and say timer plus equals time dot delta time. That's our basic timer system done. Now we're going to be setting up a couple of statements here, if statement, and we're going to be working out the percentage of the day. Now I've worked this out in my finished script, so I'm just going to check myself here so that we know we're doing everything 100% here. So alright, so we're going to say here percentage of day is equal to the timer value divided by, divided by minutes in day times 60 seconds in a minute. So this is how we work out how many minutes are in the day, or how many seconds are in the day, because our timer works on a second basis. So it will actually divide the value of the timer by the amount of seconds that are in a day to give us the percentage of the day. Then we want to reset our timer each time it becomes greater than a day. So if our timer is greater than minutes in day times 60 seconds, we might as well just put those in braces or brackets, and then we will say timer equals 0.0f. That will reset our timer and allow us to start the day from scratch once again. Now the next method we'll be creating, we're going to say void, actually we're going to make this a boolean, what did I say? Is night. So we're going to do a check to see if it is or isn't night. So create a new bool value and call it C. Initiate it to false. So it is false until it is proven to be true. Okay, so we're going to say if the percentage of day variable is greater than 0.5 if, in other words, 50% of the day. So if it is now a full day cycle has passed, we can then go ahead and either return the value as true or false depending on this value. So we will then change our C value to true. So if the day is further than 50%, C becomes true. If it is not, it just stays in false. And then we return the value C. And that's it. Now, the last one, we're going to go void update lights. What this method will be doing is changing the intensity value of the light based on the percentage or based on the variable that is returned from the method is night. So I'm just going to brush up real quick here. Alright, so let's declare a new light inside of this method. We'll call it L. We'll say it equals get component, because remember this is going to be attached to our light, so we get the light component, that way we can reference it very quickly. And now we can say if is night, so if it is night time, we can say go ahead and just decrease the intensity of the light. So if L for our light or our sun as intensity is greater than 0, because we don't want this plummeting into the negatives, then we can say L dot intensity minus equals 0.05 if. I found that was a reasonably smooth change in the lights. Now we can close both if statements and create an else statement that's basically the opposite of that. So if it is not night and L's intensity, L intensity is less than 1, so the sun is not at full intensity yet, then we need to start building up the intensity again. So L intensity plus equals 0.05 F. So that's just our basic smoothing in and out of the different light values, the intensity values, as I said. Now, don't worry if you don't catch all of this as I'm going through it. I'm trying to get through it reasonably quickly so that I can get this uploaded, and you guys will have links in the description to this entire C# script, and I'm making it available for you guys, so you guys can literally just copy it and paste it into your project and use it for your own day-night cycle. Okay, so back to our update method. The first thing we want to do is check time. So we're going to go there and call our check time method. After that, we're going to go right ahead and say update lights method. After that, we're going to go ahead and we can now work in the rest of our statements for the update function. Again, I'm just going to brush over my finished work here quickly. Alright, so we're going to work out our turn speed now. Turn speed is equal to, let me check this quickly. I do apologize for this. Okay, so the maximum degrees of rotation, which is 360 degrees. So our turn speed will be 360 point F, right, divided by the value of minutes in day times 60 seconds per day. Sorry about this. Times time delta time. So that's pretty straightforward. So turn speed is 360 degrees divided by the minutes in days, the minutes in a day times 60 seconds per minute. So times time.delta time. So that gives us a real-time progression of the rotation. Okay, so the next thing would be to rotate our actual light. So all we're going to do here is go ahead and say transform dot rotate around. We want to use the rotate around method. We're going to open up the arguments here, and we're going to say transform for the first argument, the point. We're going to say transform position. For the axis, we're going to go ahead and say transform right, which is our x-axis, and for our angle, we're going to just input our turn speed here. So that's the basic of all of this. Now, to see how the percentage value works in real time, we're going to add a debug function down here, method, a call to debug log, and we're just going to debug our percentage of day. I would just like you guys to see the way that this works. What will happen is the percentage of day will be just logged in our console, and it will go from 0 to 1 and then reset itself. So that's our percentage value. So 0 is 0%, 1 is 100%, 0.5 is 50%. So in other words, the way that this works is that the isNot method checks if the percentage is greater than 50% or 0.5 float. So let's go right ahead and we drag. We're now back in Unity. I've saved out my file. It's checked. There are no compiler errors. That's great. All of that's fantastic. We're going to now drag our day-night script here onto our directional light. And once we click on our directional light down here, it'll be available. And we can now set our value to 0.5 for half a minute or 20 minutes or an hour, depending on what your game wants. If you want real time, then you should go for minutes in a day. You would then work out the amount of minutes in an hour and then take the hours, and you could shift all of these variables according to hours instead. If you wanted a 24-minute day, which is often seen in open world sort of games where a minute will be equal to an hour, so let's say 24-hour days, we could just input 24 here and it would progressively move along the time value entered. So 24 or 2 or whatever you want. I'm leaving it at 0.5 so that we can see it all in action, and it doesn't take too long for us to actually see it. So there we go. And if you check down in your console here, you'll see the value at 0.2, 0.3, and if we watch our intensity value here, we should see it decrease to 0. And there we go. It is now dark. And as we close in on dusk, or dawn rather, it will build back up to 1 as the sun breaches the horizon. So that's basically it, and you have it. I'm going to quickly add in a plane, just a plane. We're just going to move it down here in front of the camera, and we're going to add a cube. Let's just add a cube in here so that you guys can really see what I'm trying to show you here. I'm going to reposition the camera a little bit as well for you. So let's check this out. So this should be pretty interesting for everyone to see this in action, the live lighting system. So here we go. One last play. You can see the sun comes up and it moves over. It's directly above us now, starts to set slowly, and as we close in, the light fades away. Now you do see some light in the scene still. The reason for that is actually your ambient light settings in your lighting panel. Now if you want a completely dark scene, which is very rare in any game, but if you did want that, you could just open up your lighting panel, which would be window, lighting. Again, I have my lighting panel docked to the right next to my inspector. I could set the ambient intensity right down here under ambient source all the way down to 0, and if I now hit play again, yeah, you should see well, almost darkness, if not a completely dark scene. I would have to also take away all the bounces and all of that to really get a pitch black scene. But yeah, so there we go. That looks pretty good to me. Yeah, other than that, again, let me just show you guys this. If I go down to my script on the directional light in the inspector panel, and I say minutes in day, and I set this to 5 minutes, I'm not going to go through the entire cycle with you guys, but if I hit that play button there, you'll see that the sun will come up really slowly, and in a lot of ways that's kind of what we want, isn't it? Yeah, so a lot more realistic in a certain way, but again, that's all stylistic. Alright, so that's basically it for this tutorial. Thank you guys for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, and comment below. I would love to know what kind of tutorials you guys would like to see from us in future. And I hope that this was useful to you guys in some way and can be applied to your games. If you're struggling with any of this, please feel free to get in touch, and I can walk you through it. Again, I would like to show you a couple of things before I leave you for good, and that is, if we go into our start folder and Skybox, we can also, as I said earlier, tint it to be a really strange sort of color. What you could also do is tint it so that you have really interesting sunsets and sunrises. What you'll see here is that the day will slowly come into a very light blue, almost greenish sky color. This could be ideal for an alien sort of sci-fi game that you'd be creating, or a cartoon-like game with unrealistic skyboxes. The procedural skybox is really quite a beautiful thing, and I do encourage you guys to play around with it, to really have some fun with it. So again, this was PixLab's Tutorial Tuesdays. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and yeah, keep learning.